This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC, on location, San Diego, Ursa 2019. I have the pleasure of having someone that I've met with episodically over email over about 15 years, and we're finally getting together in person, so we figured might as well just do it live on a podcast, make it official. TRX founder, CEO, Randy Hetrick. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show on an early morning in San Diego.
Top of the morning to you, Pete. Happy to join you.
Excellent. So you were a Navy SEAL. I was not. And you've turned your passion into a profession and a household name. And you've helped a lot of people, and you've created a big movement. So today, besides us becoming friends, which is the objective of the podcast, is to share with our audience, you know, how you built the business, how you think about the business, how you kind of put the noise away and say, like, hey, this is where I'm going next. And, you know, kind of what drives you and, you know, where you see the future. And we'll go from there. So maybe you want to just give people like a quick primer on your background. And then if there are things I want to fill in, I'll just fill them in for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, so, I spent the first sort of half of my adult life in the Navy SEAL teams as an officer. And, you know, I did about 14 years in total. During that time, most of the time I was in operational units, and the common sort of repetitive theme is we would deploy overseas, and basically SEALs and every other kind of special ops dude is essentially a pro athlete in uniform, right? In terms of training requirements and physical output. But we would deploy, and the second that we left the States, we would no longer have any gear to train with. And on one of those deployments, you know, I was stuck in a little warehouse in Southeast Asia, and I came up with this idea to use, I had accidentally deployed with my jiu-jitsu belt stuffed in my bag. Wow. And I just got this idea to sort of train for climbing up the side of a ship on a ladder, which meant you had to do the pulling muscles. There was no way to do that, and I came up with this idea of, hey, maybe if I take this belt, tie a knot in the end of it, throw it over the door, and then use my body weight against gravity, I can create a tool for this purpose, which today, we call functional training.
Sure.
And so we were ahead of the curve on that one, and I created
this. So like last resort training is what it should have really been, right?
Yeah, it was just, you know, hey, the original invention of necessity, but it got popular with guys in the squadron, and I decided to make a business out of it.
I got to tell you, like, the underlying theme of most of these podcasts that we do, and every entrepreneur I talk to, it's based on, I had a personal frustration. So I knew exactly what I was trying to solve for, and then I came up with a creative way to solve that, and that became a company. And you can never take away like the DNA of that experience, and that DNA basically becomes the brand promise, and that promise is something that you promised yourself, effectively, when you started the company.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the common thread. If you go, at least with entrepreneurs that did it the right way, there are entrepreneurs, right, that start things with a solution for which there is no problem.
Exactly.
And then you're rolling a rock.
You're bell and whistling the shit out of everything,
and you're trying to roll a rock uphill because you didn't really solve anything.
Yeah.
And I think the best ideas are the ones that, you know, people struggled with themselves and then suddenly had that, you know, epiphany of a great solution. And if they had this real problem, then probably somebody else did. And it ends up, you know, that you're solving something so that you don't have to market it quite as hard. Whereas if you're just creating another version of something somebody else has already created, or you're creating something that nobody even needs, well, now you need to push pretty hard to get people to buy it.
Well, and also I think over time, you get. I mean, I was pretty popular. You're pretty popular, and you're like, if I need something, there's a very good chance that almost everyone else that I'm friends with needs the same thing because they kind of live the same lifestyle I do. You know, some of those things are, you know, positives, some of those things are negatives, but everyone's looking
unless you're a complete kook, there's somebody else who probably has that need too.
Yeah, exactly.
And even if you are, there's lots of other kooks in the world.
Right.
So.
I'm not completely, off the wall to do some functional training in Southeast Asia, or like in a place where there's not a full, health club operation set up. So where'd the name TRX come from, and why the color yellow?
Well, you know, those are both interesting questions.
Thank you.
I'll take on the name first. I used to try, when I first brought the suspension trainer into the market, right, there was no predecessor, so nobody understood how it worked. And they used to say, well, wait a minute, it doesn't stretch, it doesn't have weights. And I would be trying to explain, no, it uses your body weight. And I started describing it to people like on airplanes or at a restaurant who were asking me what I did as a total body resistance exercise system.
And circa what? Give me like people need to understand how long it takes to like get ubiquitous with a brand.
Well, the name first struck me probably in around 2004, 2005, because when I first brought the product to market, we were called something else. We were called Travel Fit because I originally had envisioned that this would be used primarily when you're on the road. That's how I'd used it, right?
Right.
And then, but the funny thing is, by the time that I was starting the company, I had kind of migrated over to using it every day, no matter what I was doing. It had kind of replaced, lifting weights for me. And so, but I was describing it as total body resistance exercise, and it just sort of struck me one day, hey, TRX.
Total resistance.
Yeah.
TRX.
TRX.
Not travel.
No.
TRX.
Yeah.
Total resistance.
Travel, it was funny because when I started catching on with trainers had this impression that anything that was made for travel was kind of gimmicky. So the trainers started saying to me, like, hey, why the travel? I see this in the gym, as becoming a mainstay.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, well, I like your vision, but hard to imagine that we could compete with these big machine manufacturers and stuff. And but trainers saw it before I did.
So you bring the jiu-jitsu set out. You come back. You're like, hey, everyone wants this. It's working for me physically, and it's working, for my guys and my buddies. When did you say, all right, let me start a company? Like, was there a jumping off point where you're like, all right, I'm leaving the service and I'm going to start this business, or is it like kind of like an evolution of like parallel pathing it?
It evolved. I didn't think decided to leave service because, one, I was promoting out of the field, and I never really wanted to be a Navy bureaucrat. I liked leading troops in the field.
How long do you stay? Like, how long can you stay in Navy SEAL? Like, to what is it? Is it based on age, or is it based on like aptitude?
It's similar to pro sports, right? Like as an operator in the field, you start to, especially as an officer, because you've got to keep going up the ranks.
Right.
So, you start to, at the elite level, mid-30s, you're kind of pushing the edge of the envelope physically, and then you need to promote up the chain because the organization needs, leaders and administrators.
Right, sure.
So, and then I had a baby on the way that I really wanted to be my first one of my friends to actually know my kid.
That's awesome.
Because everybody else who had kids, had to leave them and deploy 6 to 9 months a year. Wow. And so I decided to apply to Stanford, and to my everlasting astonishment, I got in. And it wasn't, honestly, when I went there, I still wasn't thinking about making a business around these crazy straps.
So you had the straps while you were at business school?
Yeah, I had created the straps in the teams, right? But it was like a fun,
right? It was like I was selling T-shirts back in the day. You had like straps.
Yeah, my buddies liked the straps. I kind of got a kick out of it.
Sure.
I never actually thought there was a business in it, but you kind of in the back of your mind, you're like, geez, I wonder,
Right.
But when I was at business school, one of my buddies had been a running back and introduced me to the S&C coaches at Stanford. And we ended up, they told him, hey, my buddy's an old commando. We're both at business
strength
school.
and conditioning for everybody.
Can we come out and work out in the athlete training center instead of the campus gym?
Nice.
And so we would go out there, and I'd go into this, it's world-class facility, go to the squat rack, hook up my straps, and crush this workout. And over the course of 5 or 6 months, every single one of the coaches came walking up to me who'd be in there training their squads and were asking me like, all right, you got to tell me, what is this thing? It's really interesting. Can I try it? 10 minutes later, they'd be like, dude, could you make a set of these for my squad?
Where were you getting them produced at the time?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't making them. I was a business school
bringing them
student.
with you.
I just had this, this set that I'd stitched together, and but they're like, could you make some of these for me? And I was like, look, I don't really make. I'm not making these or selling them.
Yeah.
Well, where can I get them?
What's the guy? The Broadway show, like Joseph and like the Technical or Dreamcoat or something. You like walking in with your straps and be like, yo, I need that. Give me one of those.
So it was, you hear that enough times, and everyone from the, the women's tennis coach to the football coach, to track and field. All of a sudden, you're at business school thinking about business, and I started sort of scratching my head, going, well, maybe. So I used the summer between first and second year to kind of, vet out designs and look into manufacturing and all that kind of stuff. And then I used the second year as an incubator that basically, I worked through every business discipline that if I was going to do this, I would need to kind of have at least more or less nailed down to do. And by the end of my second year, you know, I to your question about the yellow, I did a bunch of focus grouping in my class, and you know, said, hey, here's the kind of brand I want to have, and here's who I want to appeal to. I don't want it to be, you know, it's already coming from a pretty masculine story, so I don't want it to be like too masculine, right? Because I want to attract women as well. And you know, that bumblebee yellow ended up being the color of choice.
That's great. I mean, it's interesting how brands, you know, evolve over time, and you kept true to the same font, right, from the beginning.
We've bounced around a little bit. It stayed close enough that you'd never know the difference.
I wouldn't know, but I like the fact, like I'm like an old ex-Gold's Gym guy, you know, and I'm like, dude, I do not mess with the font, you know, don't mess with the colors, don't mess with the font. Like, hey, it's like bell bottoms, like people wearing bell bottoms now, but you got to stay true.
Great
through,
brand,
you know?
It takes a long time, right? So if you keep changing things, you make it harder, not easier, for people to lock on to your brand and start to adopt it.
So part of the audience on these podcasts are listening for educational purposes, and they're saying, okay, I want to develop a product and I want to build a brand, or I want to build a company. You know, you obviously took time from going from, you know, a Navy SEAL, 2 years of full-time business school, right? It wasn't like a night.
No, it was full-time. It kicked my butt, too.
Yeah, I went to Harvard Business School, and for the first couple of weeks, I was like, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I need this. You know, I left my day job where I was I was in my comfort zone. I was making decent money in New York, and I went to business school, and it wasn't until like a month afterwards that I got there. I'm like, okay, one, I can compete here. Two, I'm like comfortable. Three, like I can be a little bit of a wise ass, which is required. And I found some guys I can play sports with. But hey, how was that experience for you? And how do you feel like do you highly recommend when you see someone who's got like 2 or 3 years of experience? Like, dude, I know it sounds like, you know, it's going to be a big investment. I know you think you're going to miss something in the 2 years that you're going to go to business school. But how is your experience, and what kind of recommendations do you typically make? You know, obviously people are different, but like, what do you tell people?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, my experience was maybe unique because I was 36, right? I was the oldest guy in Stanford Business School in my class by like 6 years.
Wow.
So I was the father confessor of the class, right? You know, all these kids were, actually it was funny, the mode was 26 and a half.
Yeah, that's what I was when I was there.
The mean was 28 because of me, right? Because I was out on the end of the teeter-totter bringing up, you know, all the 26-year-olds into an average of 28. So it was a little bit of a harsh adjustment, and I'd come from, you know, being a squadron commander at the Special Missions Unit, a pretty sort of self-congratulatory place, and I landed at the bottom of the curve, you know, of all. In Stanford, the first year is all quant, and I hadn't had math in 25 years, so it pretty well kicked my ass. But I needed to do it, and to your question, you know, I think it sort of depends on where someone's coming from. If they're coming from a relevant, business-focused area, and you know, then I would say that an MBA is more maybe elective. If you're coming from like I didn't speak business. You know, I had no clue.
So for you, it was kind of like, it was really like a crash course.
It's like a reset.
And like,
point,
it'd
right?
be like, okay, if I'm going in here, I'm going in hard, and I'm going in like educated, and I'm gonna like, you know, come out of here and say like, all right, I caught up, basically.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd spent 14 years was learning how to get rid of bad guys, right? Not build a business
with good guys, for good guys. So I had to I needed the help to kind of figure out vocabulary, understand basic stuff. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was worthwhile, but it is to a certain extent what you make of it, right? Yeah, I mean, I tell people to go. I mean, you know, we're on a planet. It's only moving 66,000 miles an hour around the fireball for no reason, and rotating at 1,200 miles an hour. So you might as well like go like experience things that you only have once in a lifetime to do. You know, I'm sure there's a bucket list,
and I'm sure your network, like mine, you know, that you got at business school, has helped.
Oh
right?
Man, it's unbelievable. I mean, that's one thing. You know, if people are considering going to business school, if you say like what the open rate on is, like on an email blast, like you want to sell a product, you know, you have like a 5% open rate, or maybe you're lucky you have a 30 or 40% open rate. You go to business school and you contact one of your business school friends, you need a favor, you get 100% open rate, and you get 100% response and 100% follow-up. So I've never had a bad experience when I've leaned on someone or done someone else a favor. And that network is it's amazing how tight that is, you know, from an alumni standpoint.
So I mean, picking a business school should be at least partly about that. You know, who has the best evolved network in your area, and then you're going to get some basic skills. But if you want your network to really work, I always tell people, like, it doesn't matter how big your Rolodex is. It matters how powerful it is. Meaning,
Yeah, sure.
Meaning when you make that call, do they not only pick up the phone, but are they willing to stop what they're doing, right? Stop the bus, get out and help you. And the only way that happens is if you've been one of those kinds of cats.
Sure, yeah. I think the interesting thing also, and just maybe a lesson that I've learned, is like when you call someone or you email someone and you ask them to do you a favor, like make sure like you have the ability to execute on what that favor is ASAP. Like don't say like, hey Randy, can you do me a favor? I'm trying to get to LA Fitness, and I'll say, yeah, I can do that for you. Like I'll do it for, what do you need me to do? And you'd be like, well, let me get back to you in a couple of weeks. Like tell me what you need. I'm going to get it done now, because when you say help, I say now.
Yeah.
But if you just let it linger, it's going to be like, dude, like don't cry wolf on me. Like
Sure.
if you want my help, like get it and take it now.
I think that's good advice on both sides, right? When somebody, if you're going to go ask somebody for a favor, make sure you can clearly articulate it and are ready to act on it. And then on the other side, if you want to have it's the old golden rule, right? The stuff we learn in kindergarten. If you want somebody to stop the bus for you when they call, you got to put the damn thing in park, get out, and say, okay, how can I help?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe in positive energy, positive karma, and like the more good things you do for other people, like it comes back. I had a guy that I used to work for, this guy Hal, and he used to always say like, look, you got to be long-term greedy. Okay, long-term greedy. Like doesn't matter what happens with this deal. It doesn't matter what favor you do here. Like at some point, and I've been doing this. He's like, I've been doing this for 40 years, and like I've made a significant amount of money, and not one person says a bad thing about me in 40 years. And the reason because of that is because I've taken care of people along the way, and I've done some favors. And Pete, I haven't got paid for some of them. And you know what? At the time, I was upset and I was young about it. But there's going to be a $5 million fee deal, and there's going to be a $10 million opportunity. There's going to be a relationship that you have that's priceless. Wait for that, because it's going to happen.
I love that advice. I mean, it's awesome advice, and it's frankly the way we built this company. We probably made more money for more people, both individual trainers and clubs, that we didn't charge for and that we haven't monetized
Sure.
than anybody else in the business. But the idea was, hey, if we help trainers and clubs build great businesses and we just keep leaning into what they need, at some point, it's going to come full circle. And we're going to be in a really unique position in this industry and also on the consumer side to really, you're long-term greedy, but, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And
how do you, I know you got a new, growth equity partner now, and it's a buddy of mine, Brent Leffel, who used to live next door to me, and we used to share we didn't share a patio, but if I needed something, I'd climb over the patio and like borrow a pair of socks. He was like out of socks by like the first 6 months I was in there. And I used to use his computer, because he had better broadband than me, and his girlfriend would come and say, Brent, why are you on these sites? And he's like, no, it's Pete. And I was like, it was 100% true. So I'm like, I'll take the blame for that. I was in there. I was on that site that I'm not supposed to go on. Anyway, I'm not doing that anymore, thankfully, but that's just a little bit of a therapy session that we'll talk about and block myself. My point was that when you take on a new growth equity partner, and it's called growth equity, it's like, okay, Randy, we got to grow, right? That's the play here. That's why we put money in. We're going to back you. You're like the jockey, and we got great horses, and let's like fire this thing up. And you're like, okay, let's figure out where we want to go. Let's figure out like staying true to our brand and who we are, and let's not go and do. I don't know. We had the guys from the ab roller here like just a minute ago. Like, all right, it's TRX. Should we go do an ab roll line? Well, that's not who we are. So how do you kind of think about in closing here? Stay true to your brand. Stay true to like, what lane that you're in, but also understand like, okay, it's a capitalist society. I'm not running this as a nonprofit, and I got to build this business, but I also got to build it smart, and I got to also enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had some other investors we had to move out, and so we knew we had to go and raise some more institutional capital. And what I learned in my my experience so far is that you really want a partner that's a lot more than just capital, because if you just take capital, number one, you better be right on the ways you deploy it, because there's going to be a tab that comes due down the line, right? That's bigger than anything you thought at the time. And then number two, it gets really tiring doing all the lifting. And so this time, right, I really wanted to partner with a partner who had, it was a complete partner and had real mojo in the industry, real contacts, real experience, and capital. Right, and so Brent and I had known each other for a long time. He was actually one of our key accounts during his time at NEV and UFC gyms.
Sure, yeah.
So, he and I had asked him to come help me work on an element of our business plan around our training center business. And while he was there, he was working on, his new fund. And we ended up deciding, hey, let's do this, structure this thing as a management buyout, get a bunch of great new partners in his LP group who come from the industry.
Great.
Right. And man, it feels amazing to have a partner who is really lifting and really contributing. And we're in the place, so to our growth, we've built a great business around product and education that has helped a lot of gyms and trainers make great businesses. And now we're at the point where we're ready to launch some new services,
right?
And I think we're going to see some really significant growth because we've put 300,000 trainers through our courses.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Over the last decade, and now we're bringing some services to them, and we're bringing some services to the clubs. We're in about 50 or 60,000 clubs. Well, those are big numbers, right? And when you start to add some service revenue, which is very high margin, recurring,
right,
you can transform what was a good but mid-margin business into a stupendous business, and that's what we're doing now.
So how do you think about just one more component here? It's like you created the brand. This brand is synonymous with you. Like you are the brand, and obviously the company's turned into a company, but in this industry, people are like, oh yeah, it's Randy's company, right? How do you think about when someone whiteboards up, with Brent and the Equity 38 guys and your other guys come in, and they say, okay, let's go into this area. Like, are you the one to be like, look, let me tell you what feels right, and let me tell you what's like overreaching for what like TRX either stands for or what we can actually, the promise that we can continue to deliver. So maybe we could just like give you a tidbit on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you get the right partners, you're mostly talking about, you're not sort of at odds about what to do. You're more talking about, hey, what sequence do we put these things in? Because if you get the right partners, they have the same sort of vision of the industry. They understand your brand. They understand your capabilities before they invest. So by the time they actually join with you, you shouldn't be on wildly different paths. If you are, which I have been in the past, then you screwed up.
Yeah, I got you.
And so we are, I think it's a great tension to the extent that there is any tension. It's around, hey, how do we generate, more profitable revenue?
Sure.
How do we manage our expenses better? What order, if we have 3 growth initiatives, which one comes first, which one comes second, and which one comes third? And those are things that, frankly, man, I'm thrilled to have.
Sure. Somebody's got to analyze
input.
your business. Yeah. Another set of eyes.
You get another set of eyes, of very well-trained brains.
Yeah.
Because, man, if you've been an entrepreneur for any amount of time, you start to realize it ain't no fun to be the only one that's constantly pushing and having to be the guy that comes up with the ideas. Fortunately, like I built a great team, so I already have a lot of great input, but it's very cool to have at a strategic level, a strategic insights and financial strategy level to have guys that know how to do that better than me.
Yeah, it's great. Well, we look forward to working with you guys, helping you build out, and expand your relationship set around the world. So in closing here, any quotes or management or like, Randy-isms that kind of fly around and be like, dude, he always says that, or like, hey, this is kind of your MO?
Well, I mean, the biggest, the quote I like the best is the Henry Ford quote on the power of belief. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right. And my guys get tired of hearing that. But I don't have a bunch of isms. I speak.
We'll take that one.
I speak a lot of military, so everything I say ends up sounding to somebody else like it's sort of an ism. But I don't have anything that's right at the tip of my tongue.
We'll do the can or the can. I think that's one. I gotta believe that the answer is going to be you can. So, congrats on the success. Appreciate everything you've done for the industry, and look forward to seeing the next set of growth for this growth play.
Right on, Pete. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, bro.